There is a lesson in today's video, which is actually do not be afraid to talk about your hobby and what you love. Talk comic books, tell people you collect, because I just heard an amazing story I get to share with you, and I was able to pick up a small stack of comics, some of which actually has some notability. I brought Peach over to my parents' house and we were walking the dogs, and I ran into my neighbor. This is, we'll just call him Phil. He actually owns a farm right next to my parents' house, and he is a family friend, but he's also a really good friend to me. He's kind of been like a mentor. He's basically family. Like he comes to family parties, and he's going to be coming to my wedding, and he was taking out his trash, so I helped him. He's getting pretty old. And so I told him I was going to visit him a little bit later on, went over to his house. He unfortunately wasn't feeling well, so I started talking with his wife, Mrs. Phil, we'll say, and she's asking me what I'm doing now that I got let go from my job. And I said, well, believe it or not, as stupid as it sounds, I might actually try to make that YouTube thing full time. I've got an eBay page. I'm going to start selling some comics. I'm going to try to bring in money through comics and my love for comics. And she said, wow, good for you. It's going to be hard, but I know that you can do it. These people are amazing people. They believe in you no matter what. And then she said, you know, I think some of the girls still have some comics left if you want to take a look. And I said, I will always take a look at comic books, absolutely. So we looked at those, and there wasn't anything in there. It was all Betty and Veronica and some Archie books that were very, very heavily read, and like Archie from like the 80s, not very valuable stuff. There were a couple Veronicas, which do have some value, so she did give those to me for free. But then she said that Phil had a tiny stack of comics left over from The Flood. So I said, The Flood? And keep in mind, this is my parents' neighbor. So, you know, we grew up in the same area, and I don't remember ever being a flood. And she said, yeah, there was a flood about 35 years ago. Okay, so that's older than me. So apparently 35 years ago, there must have been some sort of flood or maybe a pipe burst. I didn't get all the details. And Phil's comic collection stored in their basement got absolutely destroyed. When poking and prodding about what was in there, he was not a Marvel guy, but he was a DC guy. And he was a collector in like the 50s. So we're talking a lot of four color. I asked her if there were any horror books. She said no, he didn't like that. So it was mostly like horror, westerns, things of that nature, a whole ton of war books, but then a lot of Superman and Wonder Woman. So I start thinking in my head, wait, you're telling me stacks and stacks and stacks of Superman and Wonder Woman from the late 40s and 50s is what was destroyed in this flood? And of course, as a lot of these stories go, it got worse. She was starting to explain to me just how many books it was and how upset he was that he didn't have pallets for this stuff. And it just got worse and worse. She told me that it was about 20 to 30 stacks. So not even piles, not even boxes. She used the word stacks. 30-ish stacks of comics that all got destroyed. And this small pinch of a pile is all that's left. They wanted me to have it, and some of you are probably going to say, did you decline? I absolutely did. I said, I can't take your only comics that you have left. I mean, these are Phil's comics from when he was a kid. These are some of your daughter's comics left over. I don't know if I should be taking this. And they said, James, shut up, take the comics. So what I'm going to show you here is what is left of a comic book, which apparently was once 30 stacks full of books from the late 40s and 50s and into the 60s. There's also a very small amount of books from the 80s from their two daughters. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but there are a couple books in here that do clear $100, so we're going to show you them today. First up, I think this is worth maybe $5 at absolute best. We've got Little Lotta, number 9, Foodland. It is volume 2, not volume 1. But it is a nice early 60s book in surprisingly well-kept shape after all these years. For that reason, that I think that would land a $5 price if you were to try to move it. We've got a 10-center, Chick Young's Dagwood Comics. Dagwood, which I was still reading in the newspaper up until like 10 years ago. It could still be there. I just don't read the funnies anymore. Love Dagwood, love Blondie. Dagwood, 59, and it's actually a 10-cent cover. Let's take a look at when this thing is from. 1955. So that is not a recent book. It does got some wear, though, but that's definitely cool. We've got a little Audrey. TV Fun Time. Number 11, 25 center. It is an oversized, but that's a nice little book there. Decent condition. Veronica. So this is one of the ones that were from their girls. Any of the Veronica, which was I think late 80s into 90s, do have some value. I know it's tricky. Most Archie comics have almost no value. And then randomly in the 80s, of all places, the Veronica titles do. Very surprising, but hey, whatever. And you know what? That is a newsstand. And actually, this is, by this point, it's 1993. So this is into the 90s now and a newsstand. Next up, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Meet Archie. And it just says it's the spring special. And knowing that all Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have some value, I looked up the book, and sure enough, it does have a small price tag associated with it. So I thought that that was really cool. That's one of the daughter's books. And I think this is the last of the daughter's books, is Veronica, number 3. Gorgeous cover with her in she's in Japan. So that's pretty cool. Then we've got a couple of these Sears Roebuck Company March of Comics Crazy Cat. Let's find a year on this if we can. 1952. A couple of these were in there. These little half comic Sears things. Pretty cool. This was extremely hard to look up, and you can actually see his name is on there. This bad boy is from 1946. It is Ivanhoe number 2. Now, I found one eBay listing that was trying to say that this is the first appearance of the Black Knight, but I did further research and I couldn't find it. So that was very strange. Additionally, I did find that this exact same book came out in 1941, and it looks a little bit different. It's got like a 10-cent up in the corner, whereas this one is a 10-center, but it doesn't have it in a corner, and this one's from 1946. So is this a reprint of the 1941? I don't know, but it is Classic Comics, which was before Classics Illustrated. So it's a little piece of history here. Is this a reprint of the first Black Knight, or what is this, man? I don't know, but it is cool because it has my neighbor, someone I value immensely in my life. It's his copy. It says his name right there. So that's really great, really cool. 1946, not a recent book. Up next, we have Lady and the Tramp with Jock. And it is a good thing I looked this up, because guess what? That is the first Lady in the Tramp comic book. Dell, 4-color. Watch out for 4-color. I told you. $6.29. It is the first Lady of the Tramp in comics. That actually does have quite a bit of a price tag on it. That nears $100, if you believe it or not. Not bad. It does get better, though, because we've got 4-color, issue 442, which is the first appearance of Peter Pan in comics. Captain Hook, Tinkerbell, everybody, you name it. This is the comic book version of that. Probably the best book in the entire haul of this little lot here. This is one of those ones I assumed I would never find. A lot of the Ebenezer Scrooge, Uncle Scrooge ones are still the most valuable. But that is, for as far as the Disney ones go, what's the year on that? 1952. 1952, that's pretty sweet. That one actually, it's got a couple issues with it, but I might send it to CGC just for the fun of it, just for the preservation of it. Next, we've got Adventure Comics 10 Center, 219, and it is a gorilla cover. If you know about gorilla covers, DC basically got wise to the fact that gorillas and apes would slightly boost sales, so they started tossing gorillas on the covers on the reg, and this is one of them. This is the gorilla with X-ray eyes. Okay, that's awesome. But hey, it is a gorilla cover, 10 center. What's the year on that? I would say like 56, maybe 55. 1955. Very nice. Then we've got a war book, Army at War. Apparently, this is what a lot of his collection was. A lot of war books from the 40s and 50s. Man, and all of it was destroyed. Sucks, man. Really does. Army at War, issue number 55, 10 center, 1957. Not a recent book. Next up, we have Adventure Comics, issue 221. This is in an almost completely detached cover. It's holding on for dear life. And I think that is another 1955 Adventure Comics book. Very nice. Not the greatest condition, though. Not at all. And this is a Super Baby book. Next up, and one of my favorites in here, a decent copy, although it does have a little chunk out of it. Wonder Woman 10 center 83, and that is actually from 1956. So 1956 original Wonder Woman 10 center. I don't know if it's a key. I didn't get that far, but I looked at the comparable data on eBay, and this actually could end up being like a $200 book. Pretty crazy. Always nice finding 10-cent Wonder Woman books in the wild. Doesn't happen too much. This next one perplexes me. Heathcliff, number 12. It's got a couple spine ticks. This is from his daughters. Heathcliff, number 12. But it's one of the anniversary border issues, and it is the newsstand. I was looking up the sales data for this thing, and I kept seeing like 50 all the way to like 75, 80, $100. Really? Heathcliff, number 12 is a near $100 book? I mean, I don't make the prices, but that is just surprising to me. I know that Heathcliff wasn't printed as much, and people trying to collect all the anniversaries, I guess. That's pretty wild to me. There's one in here that's even better, though. Then we have a Heathcliff Funhouse number 1. I think that's worth like $1. Wonder Woman, this also is from the girls, and it actually has a couple non-color breaking spine ticks, but every problem with this book is pressable. I'm not kidding. That is the last issue from the run. That is the marriage of Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. But 329, yeah, 329, that's the last issue before volume 2. So that's kind of a big deal. That's a nice $20, $30 book randomly in there. And that was from the daughters. Here's a Whitman. The Whitman, I believe, was the 70s, or was this 80s at this point? Yeah, so, yeah, looks like 82. So that's not going to have really any value to it. Next up, this is the shocker, okay? Muppet Babies. Again, it's that anniversary border. And all of the recent sales put this apparently at $100. There's 2 listed on eBay right now. Both of them were not newsstand. One of them was 100 and the other one was 150. So some of these rarely picked up Star Comic ones are, turns out they're pretty valuable. So I gotta get that in a bag and board, man. Supergirl 402, or Adventure Comics 402. Very nice. I looked it up. It's not a key. And we're talking a couple bucks. March of Comics. Sears, another one. What was this? The last one was 1952, I think. Yeah, this one's 1952. I like these little half comics from the 50s. It's definitely a little piece of Americana. Last book here is Judo Master 93, but it is actually a reprint of 93. The regular 93, which is a Charlton book, I believe, does have some value. This one is the reprint, so this one's only worth like $5, but still kind of cool for sure. First appearance of the Tiger. Well, first reprint appearance of the Tiger, but it's got a sticker on it. And I have not figured out how to get stickers off comics. That is something I still don't know. Ignore the 80s books for a second. That was a tiny, 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 tiny sampling of what his collection looked like. I would say like that was like one 1,000th or maybe even less of his collection, and there was pretty good stuff in there. First Peter Pan, First Lady and the Tramp, and a couple other kind of notable books in there. So my mind is running wild. Like, what is some of the stuff? Like, wait, hold on. You collected DC from the late 40s and 50s? As you all know, there might have been some seriously good stuff in there. Additionally, Four Color was in full swing. There was probably all kinds of keys, and Uncle Scrooge's and all kinds of stuff that was probably in there. All those westerns, all those other books. Mm, it, it is a damn shame. And this is a collection that's been gone several decades now, and this is just a tiny little historical piece of it. This is why I collect comics, because I love these stories. This one, it doesn't get more close to home. This guy practically is family. So my only question is, I don't know how we never talked about this before. This story is new to me, and I know I've talked about comics before, but I'm glad this time they decided to share that with me and share this pile with me. And I look forward to getting out there and continue hunting. Hope you all feel the same. Keep on hunting, collect what you love, respect the past.